He walked out in silence, and I didn't stop him. The night unfolded like any other. Simple, still, barely worth remembering on the surface. I stood by the stove, gently stirring a pot of stew, its rich aroma, garlic, thyme, slow-cooked comfort, filling the kitchen. From the living room, the TV murmured some forgettable news segment, blending in with the low clang of metal on ceramic. Across the room, Adam lounged on the couch, scrolling his phone, occasionally reading headlines aloud or chuckling quietly at something only he could see. To anyone peeking in from the outside, we probably looked content, domestic, calm, maybe even happy. But the truth sat buried beneath that peace, quiet and slow-moving like rot under floorboards. It hadn't started that night, not even that month. The slow decay had been happening for ages, creeping in around the edges. I'd thought about this moment countless times, while folding towels, rinsing dishes, lying awake beside him in the dark. I'd rehearsed the words, sculpted them like clay in my mind, trying to get the shape just right. I wanted them to sound certain, strong. But when the moment finally came, they weren't sharp or poetic. They simply existed. His voice snapped me from the tide of my own thoughts. "Want to watch something after dinner?" he asked, eyes still fixed on his screen. Just a casual question. Harmless even, the kind of thing you ask someone when you assume they'll always say yes. I turned off the flame. The stove hissed softly before falling quiet. I wiped my hands dry and crossed the room, sitting on the edge of the couch. Not close, not far. Enough space between us to hold everything unspoken. My pulse was a drumbeat, but my voice was unnaturally even when I said it. "You haven't asked me how I'm doing in over a year." It landed between us like glass on tile. Sudden, delicate, impossible to ignore. The only sound was the quiet static of the television. He looked up, blinking like he'd misheard me. Confusion passed over his face. Then, a half-hearted smile tugged at his lips, as if to say, "Come on, don't be like that." But I didn't return it. I just held his gaze, really held it, for the first time in what felt like forever. The look in his eyes changed. The smile slipped away. He set his phone aside, leaned forward slightly, studied my face like he'd never really seen it before. I didn't elaborate. I didn't have to. That one line held everything. Every night, I cried silently facing the wall. Every time I reached for connection and felt only space. Every moment I sat beside him yet felt alone. I had loved him once, so fully it startled me. But that love didn't disappear in flames. It was smothered, quietly, constantly, by his indifference. He finally spoke, his voice low and brittle. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" He wasn't being defensive. He sounded lost, like someone waking up too late. "I did," I replied, softly, "just not in ways you ever bothered to hear." I stood up, returning to the kitchen, not out of anger or performance. I didn't want drama. There were no harsh words, no slam cupboards, no accusations flung across the room. Just a silence that filled the space like fog, thick, heavy, and undeniable. I heard the creak of the couch as he stood. For a moment, I thought he might say something, anything, but instead, he walked to the door, took his keys from the hook, and stepped out without looking back. The door clicked shut with a soft finality. I waited for footsteps, an engine, maybe the door reopening. 5 minutes. 10. But the house remained still. He didn't return, not that night, not the one after. I sat at the table, the stew cold and untouched. The quiet was unnerving at first, too large, like a room that had never been lived in. But strangely, I wasn't afraid. There was something peaceful in that silence, something real. It was mine. Days passed. No texts, no missed calls. No apologies, no questions. Just his absence, bigger than his presence had ever been. And maybe that was the hardest part. Not that he left, but that he didn't choose to stay. He didn't fight, didn't ask what went wrong, didn't ask what I needed even when everything was already crumbling. But endings aren't always explosions. Sometimes they're soft, slow dissolves. Love doesn't always shatter. Sometimes it fades until one day it's gone and all that's left is quiet. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He just walked away. and I let him.